Right, welcome to BrokenToad's guide to preparing your Dark Crystal and Labyrinth miniatures. Some of you will be experienced modelers and some of you will not be. That is absolutely fine. So what we're doing here today is just giving beginners a rough overview of how to work with resin and how to prepare it for the painting stage if that is what you wish to do. Now, first things first, it's a good idea to get yourself some latex or vinyl gloves just to protect your hands, and get yourself a mask, which I would imagine everybody has one of those at the moment. Resin is absolutely fine to touch, but when you start sanding it, the dust from sanding it can be hazardous. So please do wear a mask when sanding or scraping any mold lines. So, right. You've got this miniature in your hands and you have no clue what you should be doing with it at all. First thing we want to do is to look for any mold lines. Now, mold lines are part and parcel of the casting process. So they will happen on every miniature. It is down to the company that casting them as to how big these mold lines are. Now, on BrokenToad miniatures, these models are cast in a way to hide the mold lines as much as possible, but the unavoidable nature of them means that occasionally they will crop up. So you have to have a quick look for them, and this is where the mold is split into two halves, so you can get a clean cast. Now, on Ludo here, who is our willing participant in this video, the mold lines are around the edge and just underneath his ears. They're very, very well hidden. Let's just let that focus a second. So you can see them just very, very small on the edges of the ears. Some will be more pronounced on other models and some will be even less noticeable. So if you're happy with that, continue. If you're not, just give them a quick sand. You want something like some 800 grit sandpaper, and if you're unfamiliar with the terms for sandpaper, the higher the number, the smoother it is, because it's the amount of particles per square inch per square centimeter. So 800 grit is 800 pieces of grit per square inch. Tools you might need. Now, I've been hobbying for a very, very, very long time, so most of my tools are well used and battered, but you want something like a sharp scalpel blade. In America, it'll be an X-Acto blade. In the UK, you'll be looking at a sort of surgical blade, which are easily obtainable from most hobby shops. This is a fresh blade, but the end has come off, so you'll be looking at something that has a very much sharper point. And then if you need to scrape any mold lines away, please do so away from you and never towards you. You'll see occasionally experienced hobbyists using their thumb to go towards you to scrape, because you do have a lot of control. However, if you are a beginner, please do not do that, because it is very, very easy to cut yourself doing that. So, small mold lines along the bottom of the ear. Just want to scrape a tiny bit off. All you're looking at doing is smoothing out where the mold line is, just blending it in to the surrounding area. Now, there isn't much to do on these on Ludo at all, so just tiny little scrapes. There is one that goes around the inside of the back here. Now, that'll probably be better removed with some sandpaper, but you can just give it a quick scrape if you need to. And also, you can scrape if you put the blade perpendicular to the model. Just guide yourself, have it slightly angled away from you, so if you do slip, you're not shoving a sharp blade into your thumb, and then just scrape, and that will give you a nice smooth surface as well. So we can just scrape that mold line there, and then that's gone. Right, before we do anything else, you want to make sure that all of your parts fit. So in Ludo's case, he has two horns which fit into here, like so. Now, each part, and this is the reason we do the test fit, each part has to be passed with a frame, which is clipped off before it's sent out. Now, where it's clipped off, you may find you get a little lump like that, which is absolutely normal. It's nothing to worry about. But this will stop the part from fitting correctly. So you can see at the back there, there's a little gap. So this is why we test fit. So all you want to do is find something that doesn't look like it was sculpted on or part of the model. Something that looks like it was clipped, and then just gently cut that off. Again, if you're a beginner, please scrape away. Just be very careful. Take off small parts at a time. There's no good trying to cut off one big section. Just do it in little bits. You're applying too much force if you're trying to cut off one big lump in one go. And then test fit again. As you can see, the join is almost non-existent now. Yeah. There's a little bit on the back there, and that can be filled in afterwards, but it's very, very slight. It might just require me to twist it slightly. So from the front, spot on. And then we do the same with the other side. As you can see, you've got that is part of the casting. And then we've got that, which is part of the frame or gate, which we can just scrape off. And as you can see, join is almost invisible. So once we've cleaned up the miniature, we've got rid of any mould lines. What we need to do now is to wash it. When you cast a resin miniature, you have to treat the inside of the mould with what they call mould release, which, as the name suggests, makes it easier to get this beautiful casting out of the mould with no damage. Now, this can occasionally leave a residue on the surface of the model, which will stop paint sticking to it if painting is what you're going to do with it. So we need to drop it into some warm water, just warm tap water with a little bit of dish soap in there. Swish that around and scrub it with a toothbrush. Please use a spare one. Any old, no longer in use toothbrush will do. Pop the model into the water for about 5 to 10 minutes, just to let it heat up and let any residue break away from the surface. Give it a good scrub and then dry it down on something like kitchen towel. Please don't use toilet paper. Toilet paper, because it's designed to break up in water, it will leave bits, little fibres all over your model if you try and dry it, whereas kitchen towel does not. So, top tip for you there. Right, so we've washed and cleaned our miniature, and now it's time to assemble him. So we've done the cleanup on the horns, and now we've done our test fitting. And now what we want to do is to use some super glue, or cyano acrylate, if you're in America. Now there are multiple different brands of this. Personally, I just get it from what we call pound shop in the UK, which is just very, very cheap, very thin super glue, which is excellent for what it does. But most brands will do. You don't want something too thick because it could squeeze out. You could easily apply too much and it could squeeze out between the joins, and you're left with a big lump of super glue around the edges. So slightly thinner is better. Some parts you may have to drill, but in the case of Ludo's horns, we're okay to just tack those on with some super glue. You could also use 2 parts epoxy glue if you wanted to. So we don't want to apply too much, just a little bit on the contacting surfaces, a tiny bit where the ball inside meets. We don't want it to spread out when we put it together too much. There we go. Just hold that in place just for a little while. Super glue is normally pretty quick. If you have any spray activator, you can always spray the other side without the super glue on with some activator, and when you attach the two together they'll stick very, very quickly. However, sometimes it's not required. Right, there we go. That is now stuck on. As you can see, there's a tiny little gap, but we can fill that in. That is not a problem at all. So let's pop on the other horn. So you can do it on either side. It depends what's easiest to get hold of, what's easiest to put together. There we go. So press quite firmly. If you find that you need to remove some dried super glue, you can use nail varnish remover, but please do not dunk the entire model into nail varnish remover because it can react with the resin. So if you need to use that to remove some excess super glue, just do it on the surfaces that have the glue on rather than over any details. There we go. So Ludo is completely assembled now, and all we have to do is just fill any gaps that you might have. We can either do this before painting, or we can do this during painting. The gaps are so small that gloss varnish will cover these during painting, but what we'll do is we'll show you how to fill those before painting. Right, so to fill the gaps on our model, we're going to be using a 2-part epoxy putty called Milliput. Now, most 2-part epoxy putties will work. There are multiple different brands. This is my very old portion of Milliput, and we're only going to want a tiny, tiny piece. It's 2-part epoxy putty, so you just need to break off a little piece and make sure they're equal. So another little piece from here, because we don't want much at all. Roughly a blob about that size. And we just mix those together. It is quite difficult with gloves on, however it is toxic. So please do use gloves when mixing this. Now we'll mix that off camera. Now the reason Milliput is in 2 colours is so that you can tell when it's mixed. So when it is an even colour without any streaking, then that is properly mixed. So we want a sculpting tool. Now these are available from any hobby shop or online as dentist's tools. So a smooth curved edge like this one is absolutely perfect for what we're doing. Now you want to put the Milliput somewhere safe, so I've got mine on the side of my desk, so I can just scrape off a little piece at a time, because we only want very, very small amounts. Because all we're going to do is find the gaps there, place them in, and now you can dip the end of your tool in some water, which will stop the Milliput sticking to the tool and help smooth it in. This is not a complicated process, it just requires a bit of patience, that's all. So once you've got it sort of roughly in place there, dip a finger in some water, so you haven't got too much, so you're not drenching the whole model, so just make sure the end of your glove is wet, and just smooth the Milliput over. You don't want to make it obvious that you've filled any gaps in. Milliput does react with water, sort of dissolves in water to a slight degree. So when you're wiping, you might find, like here, the sort of liquid water Milliput mix has started to fill in any even smaller gaps. Which is perfect. That's exactly what we want. So no complicated sculpting or anything like that. Just make sure when you move your finger, just wipe off any excess off the rest of the model. And then what we can do for the very, very, very small gaps is do what we call a milliput wash. So you take your ball of milliput on your desk, take the end of a paintbrush and make a little indent right there, and then pop it down on your desk. Use a rough old brush for this, so something like that, terrible old brush, and get some water into the little indent you've made in the milliput and swish it around until you've got an almost sort of liquid paste. So there we go, we have a little indent and some liquid milliput in the middle. Now all we need to do is just brush that liquid milliput over any gaps in the model, and that will clean up and dry hard. So there we go, that's the joins cleared, and once that's painted you will never know they were even there. You can wash your brush out in water as normal, but if you do let it dry, that brush will then be completely ruined because milliput is waterproof when it's dry. So if you don't get it off quick off the brush, then that brush is forever coated in milliput. So please don't use a brand new brush. Well, there we go. That's Ludo all done. So thank you very much for watching. I hope this has been useful to you. And stay tuned for more assembly guides from BrokenToad, Black Sun and Jim Henson. So thanks very much everybody. Bye bye.